Happy Pride Month. So we are almost towards the end of Pride Month. And here at the ASCB, we have a series of blog posts being posted. Please follow us on social media. As we have been doing the last years, as always, we have a speaker for Pride Month, and it is a delight to have Rochelle Diamond today here with us. But always before going to her amazing talk, Shelley's talk, it's always a reminder for everybody that Pride Month, everybody see the flags over there and everybody's celebrating and partying around. But we always have to remember that Pride comes as a result of a riot. So Pride started as a very strong protest against violence against LGBTQ folks. So it's always good to have that historical perspective when we celebrate Pride. So Shelley is here to talk to us. She's the manager of the Rothenberg lab at Caltech and also the director of the Caltech flow cytometry facility and the chair emeritus of How to Innovate, which maybe some people still know as NOGLSTP. She's also a fellow of the AAAS. And a fun fact about her is that she was one of the members of the team that actually cloned the human insulin years ago. So everybody that buys insulins over there, here and there, Shelley's hand is there. So, well, the reason that I think she's a fantastic speaker for this opportunity is that she's a pioneer, a trailblazer on LGBTQ rights in STEM. When we think about how all the LGBTQ movement moved around the world in all different professions, those things, that activism had a different path. And I think Shelley is one of those amazing examples that can pass through that journey to talk us about. And knowing history is the way to prevent things from the future. So there's a lot of anti-LGBTQ stuff going on right now, and understand a little bit the past, the present, and the future. I think it fits Shelley fantastically here. So Shelley, thank you for accepting our invitation, and welcome to ASCB.
Well, thank you, Bruno, for the really kind invitation, and I'm very happy to be a part of your Pride Month. So good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, and happy Pride. It's just been quite a life. I'm now 72 years old, and I've seen a lot of what I'm about to show you. And I have now stepped down as a director of the Caltech flow cytometry facility, although I still consult for it, but I'm still doing research. So so here we go. Let's see if I can control these slides. There we go. So Pride Month, the whole month of June is dedicated to this. And it's celebrated to honor the 1969 Stonewall Uprising that happened in Manhattan. But I think most of you don't realize that the first demonstration to protest police brutality against our community preceded Stonewall by over 2 years. And both were tipping points for the liberation movement in the US. The first official Pride Parade began on the anniversary of the Stonewall riots with Christopher Street Liberation Day. But the fact is that the Black Cat riots in Los Angeles were 2 years before. So we through our struggles, through our progress, fact is that we are celebrating our joy, our resilience, and our pride, and to unite us all in our continuing fight for our rights. So back in the bad days of the 70s and the 80s, when I was growing up, homosexuality was considered a mental disorder. We were not allowed to get security clearances. We could be fired if we were discovered to be gay or lesbian or just queer. And we were barred from adopting, from marrying, to be able to serve our country. And the picture that I'm showing down below is Barbara Giddens on the left, who is an activist. Frank Kameny, as most of us knew him, who was fired from the U.S. Army Mapping Service and barred from government and became an activist. He had a PhD in astronomy, so he was a scientist. And Dr. Henry H., who, if you'll notice, was wearing a disguise. And he was actually John Fryer, who was a physician, prominent psychiatrist, who actually gave an impactful speech at the 1972 American Psychiatric Association annual meeting, which catalyzed the movement to remove homosexuality as a classified mental illness from American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So before that, actually catalyzing speech, we were considered mental people. And it took a lot for him to come and address with scientific facts about our community. So the first March on Washington was actually October 14th, 1979. And 8 years later, in October 1987, the Gay and Lesbian March on Washington, March on Washington included gay and lesbian scientists. We marched together, coming across the country and uniting in solidarity. And you can see here a picture of our group. NOGLSTP scientists and engineers, gay and lesbian scientists of history. And these people came from Los Angeles, from Chicago, from San Francisco, all of our groups. So we've been marching ever since. This is pictures of what the Los Angeles gay and lesbian scientists marched over the years. You'll see our closet, which we made, which really was a riot because we would crawl into the closet, put on a lab coat, open the door for them, and they would cartwheel down the street. And it was just a lot of fun. This is me actually paying a pilgrimage to the Stonewall Inn when I finally got to come across the United States. And down below is me in convertible with my good friend Kate Hutton, who was the Caltech seismology lady. And that was just a lot of fun. And actually, one year we won the Grand Marshal's parade unit. So that really, LA gay and lesbian scientists had a lot of fun during Pride through a lot of years. So why am I giving this talk? I've been, I guess, involved in the history of LGBTQ scientists and technical people from almost the beginning of when I heard about them. Because let me go back in my history a little bit. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, to a very prominent family. I was a major tomboy, as you can see by my fishing. But I was also the only girl of my generation and expected to be a socialite. And I was a debutante. I actually had a real coming out, as you can see in my coming out picture. But at that coming out ball, I actually got deathly ill. I decided I had to really stuff myself and be what my family wanted. I actually wanted to go to Berkeley. I couldn't because of my illness. I went to a small women's college in Denver, started the anti-war movement there. This is in the 1969, 70s. And then I really wanted to do science. So I spent a summer in the University of Hawaii and got my first taste of developmental biology. And then that became history for me. But I ended up marrying my best friend from high school. And I was with him for 10 years until I just couldn't handle it anymore. And I decided I had an affair with a woman, which was discovered when I was at City of Hope after the after being on the team that cloned the human gene for insulin, I went to another lab to start building gas phase protein sequenators, which were prototypes. And an engineer came to help me because I made horrible cold solder joints. In those days, we didn't have computers. Everything was done on a breadboard. And he found out that I was having an affair with a woman and sabotaged my work, and I was let go from City of Hope. And that was the worst day of my life and the best day of my life because it was freeing. Laying in bed with my lover on a Saturday morning, I actually was listening to something on the National Public Radio called I Am, Are You? And a woman by the name of Amy Ross was on talking about Los Angeles gay and lesbian scientists. And my lover dared me to go. And I went and I found people who looked like me, who seemed like me, who were doing work like I was. And I found myself, I found my family. And I got involved with Los Angeles gay and lesbian scientists. And you see on the left, one of our meetings, and the person to my left is been my wife for 40 years. And it's just been a real journey through all of this. So we started working on the women's program, and this is my life at Caltech in the flow cytometry facility. This is about my work with Dr. Ellen Rothenberg, who I've been with she hired me 42 years ago, working on the development of the immune system and starting the facility, whose new director is Michael Gregory. Anyway, and getting involved with tons of different kinds of projects. Caltech is, unlike many other places, it's small, but every single lab is different. And so I got into so many different things, and I wrote a protocol book with Sue DiMaggio to help our students. There it is in living color. And then we started with Laura Simpson, we started the Southern California Flow Cytometry Association. So I was doing a lot of stuff on the biology front, on the working in my career and managing Ellen's lab. But I just needed to be able to do what I felt was important for other people, because you have to be yourself to be able to be creative. I did all this stuff without a PhD, without a master's. And I did it because I was comfortable being out. And so the thing is that coming out is an endless process. It just never ends. And if we aren't out, then we're invisible. And people assume things about us. Because we live in a gender binary culture for the most part, although we're trying to break that open, but it's still true. But it's important because even though people say, well, it's none of our business who you are, what you are, it is, because if you are working in a team, what happens around the water cooler is important. Because that's where you socialize in the workplace, and that's where you build confidence and build a repartee with the people you're working with. If you are married like I am, we got a two-body problem if I'm not out. Do I bring my wife to the events that the lab is putting on? What if she's sick, or what if we decide to have children? What about family leave? Would there be any? What about immigration? And most of all, what about authenticity? Because you have to bring your whole self to what you're doing, or you aren't a team player. People don't trust you if they don't know about you. So it's important. So we started these efforts at Los Angeles Gay and Scientists. Other groups also across the country in 1982 were starting these groups. And here's a list of all of them. Okay, just really major cities in the United States. So here's our first newsletter. Okay, and we were called the National Organization of Gay and Lesbian Scientists, not technical professionals at that point, 1983. We were proud to at least get a newsletter going. And from there, we started to get some publicity. But like many advocacy groups, we were created at the intersection of grassroots equal rights activism and the need to network socially with like-minded colleagues. Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Scientists were established in '79. Those 16 local groups across the states we all had common concerns. And so we decided that we should have a national meeting. We planted our seeds at the American Association for the Advancement of Science at the January 1980 meeting in San Francisco. And AAAS helped us have a special session to discuss the concerns that homophobia was having in the workplace. And that really was I would say the growth of the first plant to get our grassroots network going and to organize events and meetings and really to address the issues that I'm talking about. So, most queer people were closeted in those days for fear of stigmatization, social estrangement in the workplace, which meant a considerable energy loss that could have been spent on scientific creativity and productivity, hiding the truth of our lives. And those foreign colleagues who we would love to have come to our labs, we couldn't get them to come in because they couldn't even attend meetings. They were disallowed from being in the United States. And we couldn't get security clearances, so you couldn't work for the government or government agencies. And medical schools weren't teaching anything about the queer community at all. We needed good health care. It wasn't being taught. Human biology courses didn't include accurate information. And historians ignored or misinterpreted the roles of our queer accomplished scientists, leaving us few role models. So there wasn't any funding existing around these concerns. So we got a grant from the Chicago Resource Center, and we funded a number of pamphlets. In those days, that was the start of the internet. So we had to do everything, by the seat of our pants, as you would think. And these Resource Center funded pamphlets really addressed a lot of the problems. And you can see here some of them. Security clearances, your rights in the law. Okay, people wanting to work for the government needed to know this. 1985, computer lists and gays. Who talked about this stuff in 1985? Computer lists. Who are we? What are the barriers that were preventing us from being from doing our work? What about employment discrimination? How is our population being measured? How do people get our demographics? And then in 1987, Scientists in AIDS Research, a gay perspective. That was really needed. So, we did a lot with paper pamphlets in the beginning. But then that integral meeting at AAAS was important because AAAS had made a resolution in 1975 that deplored any form of discrimination on the basis of sexual behavior between consenting adults in private. In 1975, that was unheard of. And of course, Margaret Mead was the president. Well, turns out she was part of the community. But she just also said, and I really always take this to heart, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So we felt comfortable by having that first meeting at AAAS. And then we started working with AAAS and did actual national symposiums. And that 1985 symposium on homophobia and social attitudes, their impact on AIDS research, was the first time it was ever discussed about the impact, because AIDS research was not being funded. Okay, it was the Reagan administration had turned on, the taps weren't turned on. And having this at a national science meeting with the press there and having press disseminating this information on NPR and newspapers was a real turning point for us to try and get better understanding of AIDS. We actually had to go out and do little talks within our own community about how lesbians do not necessarily spread AIDS, because everybody thought it was all gays. Those were the days. I mean, of course, we're not that far away from it right now, Jen. But we also did a poster at AAAS, Homophobia in the Scientific Workplace. We surveyed thousands of companies on their attitudes and what their policies were regarding the community. That was the first time that had ever been presented, at least among science and technological companies. 1994. Here we are, social, ethical, and scientific perspectives of biological research on and sexual orientation. There was just a paper that came out this last couple of weeks talking about this again. This is 1994, okay? Assessing healthcare needs. We were the first group to talk about PrEP. We brought the scientific researchers who were working on it. It had not been put out there yet. Scientific and ethical perspectives on the risk of HIV/AIDS therapeutics. And also that also entailed a clinic at Harvard that was using elutriation to wash sperm. And they were using high retroviral doses and then using elutriation to separate the sperm from everything, and then using that for artificial insemination. But I don't know if I was the only person on earth that realized that sperm are made every day and they're going to incorporate those drugs into the DNA. And Harvard shut their clinic. They actually came to the symposium, and within 2 weeks, the clinic was closed. So we've done some interesting things. 2005, defining male and female biology in the law. Well, here we are right now with all these laws about transgenders and healthcare, and we're talking about this 20 years ago, okay? And people still don't get it. They still don't get, I mean, the new laws don't even take into account intersex. I don't know how they're going to do this with the intersex community. I mean, so yeah, so, and we've been talking about these things on a national level for years. The 2010 was the one on PrEP. I got that mixed up, but the 2010 was bringing the PrEP researchers in and looking at the future, including for Africa. So anyway, we've been doing things. We actually, in 1986, had an amicus curiae brief to the Supreme Court on security clearances. And then we worked in 1995 with the Congressional Accounting Office about changing the way security clearance cases or security clearances itself were being done. And we're actually part of that report that the GAO put out. We worked with all the lawyers in all the cases and documented that being out was not a security risk. It was not understood back then. So here we are. It's 2004. Several years ago, we decided we needed to be more inclusive because our name doesn't really represent all of our community. So we changed our name. We're now doing business as Out to Innovate. And then we hit COVID, and a lot of things happened to the organization, but we're now known as Out to Innovate. So it's important because we have to keep going. We are still 20% disproportionately represented in STEM industries. Either people aren't being out or we're just not being recruited. We still face bias in the workplace that leads people to stay in the closet. 40% of us are not out at work. They'll answer a questionnaire, but they're not out. And 70% of us who are out at work still face that discrimination. So there's still a ton of work to be done. And 30% of our young people don't even consider going into STEM because it's too much. They can't handle it. They fear that they'll be discriminated against, and then there's just too much. But the bottom line is, when we don't see ourselves represented, we don't go there. The young people do not go there, although there are some brilliant people that are. We still are well underrepresented. So we want to be able to inspire them and to motivate them and be able to be who we are and bring all of our creativity and all of our energy to the discoveries that we need to have. So Out to Innovate has been part of a group of people who have been asking the government to be more inclusive in their data collection, the demographics. And actually, a bill was introduced into Congress, the LGBTQIA+ Data Inclusion Act, to get NIH and NSF and other agencies who fund to do better on their demographics. So, and also those surveys have to maintain necessary confidentiality and privacy standards. So the wording has to be right. And so we are working with everybody to do this. And AAAS has actually been a point organization for this, and they're setting up different focus groups to help for this. So we signed on with 90 other scientific societies, and I don't know if cell biology has signed on to it, but hopefully they will if they haven't already. But it's really hard because right now, the new research this week, over 522 anti-LGBTQIA+ bills are in state legislatures across the country. Half of them targeting transgender and non-binary people specifically. We need to make sure that we have the same rights and the same ability to be ourselves as anybody else in this country and anybody else in the world. The world is actually scarier than the United States at this point. So, when people are banning diversity education initiative groups on campus or initiatives, I'm part of that initiative on the Caltech campus. They inhibit the ability for people to understand our community. And when they ban our books in libraries, they're inhibiting the children and the adolescents from knowing more about what's real about our community. And so that's really, in my view, a tough barrier to overcome. We have to be able to unite, and elections are what that's really all about, is to having the right people represent us. Gender affirming care is being attacked and absolutely ignoring the facts about medical conditions, whether it's androgen problems or whether it's intersex people. They're not even talking about that. Scientists have to step up and talk about things. We are the authority figures on this, not a mayor who hasn't even taken a biology class. It's up to us as biologists to speak up and to hold firm about what's important about the facts. So, conversion therapy is restricted in only 24 states. So 25 states or 26 states are where we can go, but not everybody can move. Insurance is another problem. Athletes is another problem. And there have been studies on trans athletes that show that they're really actually at a disadvantage in some cases. So we have a lot on our plates right now. And the other thing is name changes. 23 states do not allow name to be changed on birth certificates for trans people. Some people, are left in limbo at that point, moving between states and whatnot for jobs and just trying to be truthful about themselves. That's really important to know who we are and transmit that to the people we work with and live with in our neighborhoods. So still a lot of work to do. And this is just one of the new figures that came out in July. Not July, sorry, in June. Just where are the states that are attacking gender affirming care? That's a lot. There's a lot of red on that map. And that's tough. So HRC has a lot of maps like this. If you're interested in this kind of information, go to the HRC website. There's all kinds of maps, whether or not, who's like companies. I went to Lockheed several years ago and did one of these talks, and it turns out that their main office is in a wonderfully blue city. And then when I had posted where their workshops were, where the blue collar workers were, they were in red states, and they were wondering why their workers weren't coming out. So there's a lot of misunderstanding, and so as scientists we need to deliver the facts. That's really one of my pitches. Where are the facts? Well, here's a problem. 27% of undergraduates identify as LGBTQ plus. Where are they going to school? What schools, what academic institutions are supportive? And which ones are being kind of shut down in their DEI initiatives? So we're working with societies like yours to advise them on issues such as meeting places, national summits, working in the unfriendly locations in the world. There are so many countries, well, there's a lot of countries, not so many, but a lot of companies like Uganda, Peru, Iran, and others that if you are being sent there to work on a project, say you're an oil engineer, for instance, and you are sent to one of the Arab countries and you are outed, you could be hanged or thrown off of a building. This has happened. These are why we work with another group called Outright International to know where the countries are that are hostile to our community and how we can possibly help those people who are in those lands be themselves. So 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps back. In an election year, you don't know how many steps back or forward you're going to have. So let me just put my pitch right now into whatever your persuasion. Do vote. Our vote matters. Okay. So our Out to Innovate mission is to empower our community, to educate all the communities about our issues and understanding, to interact with professional societies such as yours, to provide positive role models, to advocate for inclusion and better equal opportunities, to mentor, to network, and to provide scholarships and fellowships to our community. This is our menu, right? Our menu, yes. This is what's motivating us. And also we want to get back to our in-person summits, which we haven't had for a while. So here's sort of an overview of our individual affiliate groups. Anybody can decide, any group can decide to become an affiliate, and they actually sit on our board to advise us. Regional groups, representatives to different societies in different minority societies especially. We want to be able to help them understand our community as well, and our community to understand their community. So it's a two-way street. We have recognition awards established in 2004 so that we can provide role models of successful LGBTQ plus people, and also to, if there's a company or a group that has done something outstanding, we want to acknowledge them, and we acknowledge our volunteers, and we're always soliciting nominations for this. So recognition awards are important. I can tell you that last year we nominated Jane Rigby as our Scientist of the Year, and she is now head of the James Webb Telescope and received the Medal of Science or Medal of Freedom from the president this year. So we've had some really great people who have become wonderful role models. Okay, so we have a scholarship fund where we have for undergrads, graduate students, and community college transfer students. And we raise money from Motorola Solutions, from Dr. Amy Ross, from the Burkhardt Hathaway Energy, and I think there's a new one that just came up where I can't remember what it is. But we're always looking for foundations and companies who would like to contribute, or societies who would like to have a named scholarship. They can be students who are pursuing in STEM in many ways. And it's I have to tell you that reading the applications, you have to have a box of Kleenex with you. Many students are living in their cars. They've been disowned. They're doing everything, and they're brilliant. They're A+ students. They need help. So we love this program. We also love this one that nobody else has, which is Career Development Fellowships for Trans, Non-Binary, and Intersex for people in STEM. And there were 11 awardees this year, and it was a donor, anonymous donor, gave us $40,000 for the last 3 years each in a row to do this, and I want to keep this going. It ranges from different things. For instance, an astronomer who wants to go to South America to one of the big observatories, for instance, that couldn't get money to go and is doing wonderful research. Another biologist working on the microbiome of forest fires, who every time he went to rent a rototiller was harassed, and we bought him a rototiller. So, I mean, you just never know what people need or what's holding them back in their research, and it can be used for travel, it can be used for going to meetings, it can go for instrumentation, or lessons on how to do AI. Lots of things it can be used for. But I love this particular fellowship. We have a mentoring program where we set up our students and our scholarship recipients with people who would like to mentor them, whether it's industry or whether it's in academic institutions. And it's been funded by a Motorola Solutions Grant. And it's also been useful for the Point Foundation STEM scholars. I don't know if you're familiar with Point Foundation, but they were one of the largest scholarship. I'm losing my words. Anyway, they hand out scholarships for all kinds of degrees. So this is more about the mentoring goals, just to be able to foster relationships. Sometimes actually people get jobs through this. And it's an interesting way to get employee resource groups at various companies to join forces with us. And it just helps to bridge that gap. We have been in hiatus since the pandemic for our Out to Innovate career summits. I want to get back to this, but it takes money to do it. It also takes people on the ground to do it. But we want to do it. We did it virtually, but it doesn't quite, not the same. You know, you need that actual energy between people, to be able to visit the posters and to hear the keynotes. And some of the keynotes are some of our recognition award winners. I mean, it's really a cool thing. So we need to get our feet back under us and get a committee started again to do this, but I want to see this happen again. So networking, we would love to network with you. We would love to be able to host receptions at national meetings. We do this at AAAS. We support, I was at OSTEM this last year. Just, you know, we try and put out a quarterly newsletter about what's going on, what should we be thinking about. So there's ways of networking with us. But most of all, I want to thank you for inviting me, for putting us on your radar. Just a simple act, if you consider joining a group like us, to show support for our goals, to eliminate discrimination, where we all work in different places around the globe even, and to be able to put our perspective out there. We are fighting with you and for you. Know that we represent you. We advocate for you. And we're happy to, you know, anything that we can do to help you, we want to do that. So everybody can be part of it. You can do it. Excuse me. And yeah, so Bruno has my slides. There's resource in the back of my slides, and you're happy to disseminate my slides. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you so much, Shelley, for the talk. And I think for sure collaborations, we will talk about the ASCB Out to Innovate collaborations. It has been a while that we didn't touch base on those things, and I think there is a place there. And talking about those collaborations, that's how I met you, right? So collaborating at SACNAS in a reception there. And
That's right.
And I totally agree with you. Being in person, it's just the experience that we need, right? Well, we have 15 minutes. The floor is open for any questions, comments. So please unmute yourself, and or you can write also in the chat the question if you want to. Yep. Well, I will start then. So I guess my question, and this is something that this year and the previous years, I keep thinking about this, is how cyclical those waves of progress, and you said about the steps up and steps further back and forth. How can we not, and maybe there'll be no answer, I don't know, but I keep thinking about this. It's like progress happens and then the retraction comes. How can we stop the cycle and just keeping things stable? I don't know. That's a magical question, I guess, but why this happens and why you think that happens?
Well, I mean, every generation is different. That's number one. and what they're taught is number one. First of all, you have to be resilient. It just, you have to be able to think forward and not, you use thinking backwards as your lessons, okay, and how things can be handled. But you have to think forward for how to make change. Making change is how you can make friends. How can you form an alliance with someone who may hate you?
Yeah.
We are experiencing something new, which is the pandemic. The pandemic has changed the way people relate to other people. The internet has changed the way we relate to people because of all this misinformation and misdirection and vitriol, absolute vitriol, which I haven't experienced since the AIDS crisis. During when I would go out and talk about AIDS, I would get a lot of hate mail. Since the election started up again about a year and a half ago, the hate mail that I've been getting has increased tenfold. A lot of it from prisons. Interesting. But I think that as scientists, we need to use the facts and our knowledge base and our ability to communicate those facts. People who have, I look at what's been going on with Anthony Fauci for the last week. I just bought his book.
Yeah.
And I actually knew him in the AIDS crisis. And he's a wonderful man. But the amount of hate mail he gets is incredible. And the fact that he has to have a security team with him and his family all the time. He's in the same position as all activists are, even though he really didn't mean to be an activist. But I think what we have to do is to band together to find things that keep us moving forward in a positive direction and not a negative direction. And just use our voice and use our votes. There's going to be people in ASCB and people in there's people in our community who are going to vote not necessarily for the community, okay? But we can use our voice and we can use our persuasion and we can say, you know, we must agree to disagree because we're all in the same community, the community of human beings. And we have to find that ability to relate.
Yeah. And I guess even though we are stuck sometimes with the alternative facts, right? So we are in this world now that the scientific facts are not, now they are challenged just because someone saw a video on YouTube, right? So it's a different world for sure.
Absolutely. There's just so much misinformation and vitriol using that as a whipping post. And we have to counter that.
Absolutely. Any questions from the folks? I don't know if they can talk or if they can write in the chat. I think you can write on the chat if you're interested to have a question. If not, I can keep asking. Light has been a while. I don't see you, Shelley. So one thing also that I think happens, and I was such a beautiful news that happened recently in Thailand, right? So Congress there actually certified same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
Which makes me think, and then I had this reflective moment that countries like United States or Brazil, are we someday going to get to that step, right? So actually not just that, because the way we live nowadays, we depend on the Supreme Court until someone makes the dangerous challenge, and then things can all change again. Those are the tricky things that enshrine in our laws, or actually just depending on a judicial trick. And how that changes, I don't know. I'm just saying that we get good news in other places too. And Imge has a question.
Yes. Hi, Shelley. That was a wonderful speech. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have a question that I'm still kind of formulating and digesting myself. And it's something I've thought about numerous times, but I'm a little worried it's going to come off a little bit poorly. Let's see how it goes. So I was wondering if you thought there were any mistakes being made by the average like LGBTQ individual, let's say me, in my workplace. Do you think there's something that we could be doing as individuals that could be hurting our cause, if you will? Sometimes it feels like there are people who, think, our community is just more sensitive, or, more prone to being louder than we should be. So I have very mixed feelings about the whole thing. I just wanted to see what you thought about it.
Well, I'll tell you a little story. Back 42 years ago, when I left UCLA because the head of the hematology oncology department took the DNA I was making and tried to go to Israel and Italy and put it into people. It was mouse DNA. We lost all of our money. So I put my resume into Caltech. And I didn't think I was going to get a job there. But a woman coming up from the Salk Institute, Ellen Rothenberg, saw it and asked me to come in and talk to her. And we talked for 5 hours. And at the end of that talk, she said, I want to hire you as my lab manager. And I said, okay, let's just stop right here. There's 2 things you need to know about me. One, I'm a lesbian. The other is I'm running a national organization that the press has actually come into the UCLA lab and with cameras and talk to me. And if this is a problem, let's just stop right here. And she told me that her lab manager at the Salk Institute was gay and he was fabulous. She's had my back for 42 years. Okay. And I have been totally out in everything I've done at Caltech. And I've had hate mail come to my Caltech address. I've had people say, why do you have to be so vocal? Why do you have to be, have yourself out there all the time? On my door, there's all this stuff. Why do you have to advertise this? And I said, because you need to know that we're around, that we're part of your community, and that we want to be part of your community. And you know what? I've made some allies. Even right-wing Christian ladies are now saying, I have friends who are lesbian and she's okay. You don't know what's going to happen when you do things like that, but there are actually better outcomes, more better outcomes than there are bad outcomes. You have to be brave. You're stepping into the unknown when you do things like that. But I feel like I've been put here for a reason. I've almost died twice, once at 16 and once at 27. And I feel like I'm here for a reason, and I got nothing to lose if I can help one person. If I can be that one person's light at the end of the tunnel, to know that it's going to be okay. You don't know. You have to weigh each incident by itself on its own merits. But the best thing to do is get to know your colleagues and get them to trust you and to have enough trust to come out. If they like you as a person, they'll still like you when you come out. And that's what I found in my life. And that's what I try actually to represent. If I can represent people like you to make a difference for where you work, that's what I want to do. I wish I had more energy. I wish my brain weren't failing as much as it is now, but I'm still out there working for you. And what you can do if you don't want to be out is you can still support the organizations that represent you. You can vote. You can set aside the differences, but actually state the facts. I hope that makes some sense.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think it, like you said, you know, we need activists for sure, but at the very least, we can all have calm and collected conversations with, you know, even our older family members. I have a young son, and I'm very openly telling my grandparents that, you know, he can be with whoever he wants to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, so little things, yeah.
It's about life's freedoms and being able, as long as you live within the law. But the thing is, we have to keep changing laws. But, you know, we just need to live our full lives. When you have to stuff your life away, that's not leading your full lives or letting your creativity out and be as productive as possible. Because you can spend so much time, you know, bottling yourself up that you never get to your PhD or your master's or the end of your project to get another grant because you spent too much time just in your own head going, I can't deal with this.
Okay, we have 2 minutes and one more question. So the question is, thank you so much for the wonderful talk. I do not have a specific question, but I would like to hear more about your thoughts about intersectionality of identities and how we talk about LGBTQ AI plus community, but it is made of many different people that are not always fully support each other.
Well, I think that intersectionality is extremely important because that's about bringing your entire self to the forefront. There's been so many hierarchies built into our lives, so many, shall I say, neighborhoods who are against each other. And the point is that we have to unite and we have to appreciate the qualities that we all bring, okay, and the arts and the culture. And that's where STEAM comes in too. I mean, you know, people, don't worry about STEAM, just worry about STEM. No, it's all part of our culture. And it's all about appreciating how our brains think. Every brain, even identical twins, is different, absolutely different. And we need to take advantage of how we think, okay? Because that's where creativity and solving problems and moving research ahead, that's where it all comes from, because we actually all perceive things differently. And that intersectionality is so important. It really is. And so I really appreciate working with SACNAS and NSB and all these other groups working in STEM and the intersection between them. It's really important. The APPI people, everybody needs to come together and say, hey, we're all different, but we all appreciate each other and not push each other away. We all have to have our own identities, and that's important. And having a group that represents your identity is important, but we still need to work together because there's so much work to be done. So that's my view on intersectionality. And, you know, everybody is different. Everybody's brain is different. Everybody's view is colored by your perception.
So
and we need to make art out of those perceptions.
yeah. So true. And here's the proof that you still have plenty of energy. So yeah, you know, so time is up. Thank you, Shelley, so much for giving this talk to us.
Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity, really. And I hope that I hope we can work with ASCB. I hope that maybe the two societies can work together.
Yeah, let's talk for sure. Alrighty. Happy Pride, everyone. Bye-bye.
Happy Pride.
Later.